This is an evaluation of the via negativa. I will be exploring the strengths and weaknesses of the via negativa. So let's begin with the strengths. Like any other religious studies topic, there appears to be more weaknesses than strengths. Strength number 1. It does not result in anthropomorphic descriptions of God, which is great because we are not left with an inadequate idea of God due to our language. By not humanizing God, we are being more respectful, as Maimonides said, that the via positiva is improper and disrespectful. It supports the view held by many mystics that God is mystical, transcendent, and ineffable, and yet at the same time it provides a means by which we can discuss God as well as accepting these attributes. In today's day and age, Christians fail to see the importance of worship. This is a generalization, however. So the via negativa acknowledges that the realms of the divine is a mystery and reminds us of the importance of worship. Via negativa also supports the Judeo-Christian idea that we are contingent beings and God is a necessary being. Hence, while human language can only be used to communicate information about contingent things, the via negativa allows us to communicate information about a necessary being. Far it meets the criticisms presented by the logical positivists the best. For example, logical positivists argue that unless something comes from sensory experience or is deductive, etc., etc., it is not meaningful. And by saying God is not something, it is something that comes from sensory experience, and hence it can meet the tests of the logical positivists. I've seen 5 strengths of the via negativa, and now we're going to look at 10 weaknesses, so double the amount of the via negativa. Weakness number 1. It may not result in anthropomorphic descriptions of God, but it results in a very limited understanding of God and is a very disengaging way to discuss God. Furthermore, it is not a true reflection on how religious people actually talk about God. It is simply a theory which does not work in reality. Pseudo-Dionysius suggests that no positive statements can be made, but by asserting negative statements, it implies that a positive statement, the opposite, must exist. Mel Thompson also points out it's all very well using equivocal language. However, this can be more problematic than univocal because it fails to convey any information at all. Tyler and Reed suggest that one cannot distinguish between atheism and theism when using the via negativa, because if we only ever talk negatively about God, then we are essentially rejecting him. And in actual fact, the via negativa cannot be an effective means for discussing God without the via positiva. They're complementary. They both help us to understand God. Without the via positiva, we would be here with an inadequate explanation of God. Having been formulated in the 6th century, many scholars see this as an outdated and anachronistic way of understanding God. Advances in biblical theology have helped make the via negativa outdated. There are many occasions where God has directly displayed his character to humans, for example Moses and the burning bush. Hence there is evidence to state that we can make positive statements about God. Hick argues that Dionysius cannot claim that God is ineffable because he is revealed through the resurrection, incarnation, and revelation. However, it's important to note that the 6th century understanding of the resurrection was different. It was seen as a manifestation of God, not God himself. Hick also points out that it is a contradiction to say that God is beyond human comprehension, then say information about him and ways to understand him can be found through the Bible. Brian Davies argues that by saying what something is not does not give us an indication of what it is. This questions how useful is the via negativa. All in all, it doesn't seem to convey very much information. This leads us to believing that it is not very useful in the real world and hence should not be utilized. Thank you for watching. Please visit my blog.